This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On the Air.
Congratulations! You've chosen conversations that dare, that go boldly where few will. I am Harry Almey, and this is the Almey Alternative on Otago Access Radio. Welcome back, my dear lovely listeners, to the Almey Alternative. And, well, wouldn't you know it, forcing their way through the security guards and breaking down the door, the Almey Alternative, despite their stated objective, seems to just be incapable at present of getting away from the mainstream issues of the day. With me today is Neave Ashton, one of the organisers of the recent protest for trans rights in Dunedin. Just give us... say hello.
Hey, Harry, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. You know, it's a miserable Dunedin day. I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, I mean, a bit grey. You said that intro was very cringy. I don't think so. I think it was perfectly fine.
It was gripping. It was gripping. It really grips me. Yeah. I refute those allegations. I've said nothing on air to that effect. Right. Why are you here, Neave? Why have you entered this hallowed hall?
I was invited, actually.
You was invited?
Yes.
Goodness me, I'll have to speak to my agent.
Yeah, by someone by the name of Harry Almey to come and talk about...
Goodness me, my clone.
Yeah, to come and talk about this specific...
If you just move the mic, just...
like this.
There we go. Perfect.
Yeah, I was invited to come and talk about the protest we had the other day on Sunday, as well as, I guess, the legislation itself, the definition of a man and woman amendment bill.
Oh, exactly. What a name! Yeah,
very serious.
No one ever said legislation was was made for stunning and gripping names.
Yeah.
So just very briefly, because we at the Almey Alternative will ask the stupid questions because we are all idiots.
Fantastic.
For my droves and my mountains of fans in Tauranga and the lovely blue deep parts of the country, could you just quickly explain what exactly is a trans individual?
Trans individual? Well, it's someone who was born with a specific assigned gender at birth, be that male or female, but as they grew up or came, they realized that their gender identity does not align with their gender at birth, so they transition into, whether that be, if they were born, say, a male, become like a transgender woman, or someone like me, someone who's non-binary.
Yes, and there's also intersex individuals as well?
Yeah, that's not so much gender identity there, that's more like physically their bodies don't neatly fit into male or female like physiology.
Fantastic. And there was a bill passed recently on the 20th of May. Well, not passed, it passed first reading, exactly. Yes. Why has it caused all this sort of ruckus across the country, mind you, not just in Dunedin, where I think roughly 1,000 people shown up?
That's right, yeah, and thousands more across the country.
Yes.
Well, I mean, it just kind of represents the next step of this government's escalation on their attacks on the rights of transgender and intersex identities and individuals. So we were pretty mad about that. Like, this isn't the first step they've taken. They've also tried to restrict access to puberty blocker medication for, I believe, people under 18, I think. And I also believe that there was an amendment to, like, sex education, which removed, like, references to gender identity from said curriculum.
Yeah, I think that's a particular a bit to drill down into, because in the Almey Alternative, we've had all our fun with all the chanting and the stuff, but now here's here for the discussions and the coffee house. I think for a lot of bureaucracy, I was thinking more sort of like fine wooden walls, but yes, I'll go for bureaucracy. I think for a lot of, God goodness me, let's just say the word Middle New Zealand. I think for a lot of Middle New Zealanders, they're probably a little bit confused confused because
Yeah, for
obviously from your perspective and to an extent mine, there is this general sort of blob of efforts against trans New Zealanders. But I remember a bit of optimism that it wouldn't go any steps forward. This is a members' bill that I think at a previous juncture had been taken out.
Right. Yeah. Like it was first, like I think it was drawn last year.
Yeah.
We held a protest against it last year. Maybe it was when it was first drafted, but then it was quietly shoved aside by Winston Peters, by New Zealand First. But I guess it was drawn again recently, and the government decided, sure, we'll just go with it, I guess.
Yeah, so to be absolutely clear for the listeners at home, this is a members' bill. This is not government legislation. This is not a bill that has come from any coalition deal. This is a members' bill that is being piloted through the New Zealand First Member for Parliament, Jenny Marcroft, on the list. She was previously elected to Parliament in 2017, lost power with the rest of New Zealand First in 2020 and has returned to Parliament as the fifth highest ranking member of a caucus of 8. A caucus that looks to be growing at the next election.
Yep.
And precisely as you say, it previously seemed like there was going to be no support for it beyond the New Zealand First caucus. What do you think's changed?
That's a good question. I feel like the government is increasingly aware that they've kind of failed to address issues with the economy and cost of living, obviously with the oil crisis and whatnot. So they're looking for some kind of way to obfuscate, right? And appeal to that kind of culture war sensibility to shift focus onto something that only really affects a minuscule amount of New Zealanders, but yeah.
So the bill is a members' bill, and all of a sudden the entire coalition, the parties of National ACT Party, New Zealand First, they've whipped their members into supporting the bill. What actually is the bill?
It's a pretty garbage piece of legislation, personally. I've read it a couple of times, and it took me a wee bit to wrap my head around it. Like, what it says is, regardless of gender identity, in any legislation, that male means biological human female and biological human male, and female means biological human female. And also defining man and woman under those same terms. So it's a bit confusing, and it doesn't really seem to have anything that's actually like actionable under law, but it has some pretty, worrying implications, and it's also like symbolically like an attack on transgender and intersex, identities, right? And
I think this contributes to a bit of the confusion because of course, doing my due diligence, I actually read the bill. Not many people, when they oppose and take positions, actually read bills. They usually look at the news and take their positions accordingly. I read the bill and was surprised about the brevity of it.
I mean, it's like one page, right?
Oh, no, it is one page. I mean, to be fair, I don't read many bills. Maybe this is the case for most amendments. Just trying to recall... It was interesting because it kind of separated out man and female and woman and female, because it defined female and male strictly by the said that under law they would be
human biological male.
Yeah, exactly. But then for man and woman it added adult.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I think had been flagged specifically by Camilla Billich, the Labour spokesperson, as also slightly concerned. No one knows what this is precisely going to do.
Exactly,
because,
yeah.
I mean, what is it going to change?
Well, I mean, it's a bit unclear, but one thing people repeatedly come back to, you say, like, defines man and woman as, like, adult. Yeah. And that leads to some legal implications that... like people under 20 might now be no longer have access to abortions, right? And it kind of represents, I guess, just a legal erasure of identities, because it says, like, regardless of gender identity, man equals that, female equals that. It's kind of, from my estimation, it's saying, like, regardless of your gender identity, you're either a man or a woman. which is like textbook erasure.
Oh, textbook erasure. What I'm getting at, and this was commented on some news things, is that the observation that it doesn't affect.
It's not legally actionable in any way. Yeah,
it doesn't change how people can identify their gender or speak about it, but it produces a technical legal difference.
Yeah.
Like, just to be clear, let's imagine sort of. Transgender listeners at home, do we know if this will affect your ability to go to an institution like a school and identify as that gender? Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite ambiguous, which is the part of the problem, right? But it could potentially mean that in like medical and civil service, environments that legally people will be misgendered, like. If a transgender man goes to get a cervical screening or whatever, how are they going to be protected from gender-based discrimination? Right? What will they be called a woman when they're asked to come up to their screening or whatever? Like, it's unclear. Again, like I say, it's a garbage piece of legislation.
So I've just got it up in front of me, dear listeners. I'm going to read it verbatim. So it's an amendment. It is adding the following: 13A, meaning of woman or female. In any legislation, regardless of gender identity, woman means an adult human biological female, and female means a human biological female. 13B, meaning of man or male. In any legislation, regardless of gender identity, man means an adult human biological male, and male means a human biological male. You'll have to remind me. I remember a joke from the rally, exactly, that woman and female was not actually quite present in any existing legislation.
I mean, the joke that I made at the rally, which is an implication of the bill, is that since it defines male as human biological male, and likewise for female, that this could impact in legislation like how animal sexes are defined, right? Like, it could mean that in legislation a male dog is now a human biological male dog, or a female penguin is now a human biological female penguin. So it's just like on its face, like absurd, right?
And is there legislation in which male dogs are discussed?
I mean, I don't know. Maybe in some farming legislation or something.
I think the interesting thing that had been pointed out, it might have actually been pointed out by the National Minister for Women, we'll get onto her in a second, that New Zealand had kind of moved away from using gendered terms in legislation in general. Like there has been a general historical shift away from that sort of thing, because that is the line coming out from Winston Peters, former Deputy Prime Minister several times, current Foreign Minister. That
against career politicians.
One more parliamentary term, dear listeners, and Winston Peters will be the longest-serving member of Parliament in our country's history.
Overturning the status quo.
In excess of 40 years. But again,
sorry.
the point that he's making is that this is going to protect women's rights, freedoms, other words that seem to kind of blend together in my mind. What do you say in response to this?
Oh, well, like nonsense, right? Like I said before, like it has the potential to restrict access to abortions for people under 20. Like that's plain-faced reading that I think Law NZ has pointed out. Like it's an implication. It obviously isn't right there in the bill. But how can you claim that your piece of legislation is protecting the rights of women and girls if an implication of the bill is that it restricts access to abortions, right?
Yes, I think that was an interesting thing, again, pulled up by Camilla Bellich. I'm sure other people had really good sound bites as well, that it had defined women as adults, which I think under law at the moment is 20. So if that there's like this quote unquote unintended consequences. I don't want to slander the members of this coalition and accuse them of gross incompetence. Just the impression that this might accidentally prohibit them from abortion, because if women have access to abortion, but now they've defined women as necessarily adults,
which is like over 20 or 20 and over.
20 or over. So if you're 18, 19, anything over. Sorry, mate, you're stuffed.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe they'll just have to trial and error this, with the genius minds behind the wheel.
Or they could just not pass the bill, right?
See, this is another interesting thing, and I want to now get onto this.
Sure.
What on earth is going on in Parliament? I know that you've given me this. Again, I think kind of like generalised, a fair enough opinion, but slightly generalised opinion.
Sure.
But when you look in the articles, it actually sounds like the National Party is itself confused why it's supporting this bill. Nicola Briggs spent her entire 5 minutes in Parliament, most of it, actually expressing doubt about the bill, but then justified her party's support of it in saying that if it goes to the select committee phase, which it is in the moment, the New Zealanders would be able to have their say.
Yeah.
What's your response to that?
Yeah, I mean, she's not the only one confused about it, right? Yeah, I mean, I don't... Sorry, could you repeat the question?
The National Minister for Women says that she's not convinced that this bill would advance the rights and opportunities or the well-being of women and girls in any way, shape or form. So she completely agrees with you in this way. But what's your perspective on her party's decision to quote-unquote, do you believe her when she says that they're only backing this to give New Zealanders a say at the select committee phase?
I think she personally is just saying that because that's what the National Party has decided writ large. And again, like, I feel like her sentiment is probably broader, but again, bringing it back to what I said earlier, that I feel like this whole bill, like, being brought forward to first, second reading, whatever, is in itself like obfuscation to distract from its failures in like the economy and with the like environmental bill, which we're seeing, effects at the polls already, right? Yeah.
Yes, no, nothing seems to be going well. Several episodes, I'm running out of jokes. At first it was the bonfire that was going on in terms of legislation being scrapped. Now it seems like there's a car boot sale. Everything's going. I think there's several bills that are going to be closing on select committee
on the same day. Yeah, it's the move on orders and that environmental protections one with the land sales, right?
Yeah. It was mentioned. It was mentioned during the protest that there was that this might be less of a question and more of actually just telling you something that I think would be worth discussing.
Sure.
I remember that there was an Ipsos bill that was mentioned during one of the speeches in 2023, showing that. Can you vaguely remember?
Was this a poll?
It was a poll. It was mentioned during a speech at one of the rallies where someone said the general point was that New Zealanders support trans people.
Yeah.
Can you remember what generally what the stats in that were, or that slipped your mind?
No, I can't remember.
Yeah, fair enough.
Specifically,
there seems to be a little bit of confusion at the moment. Recently there have been polls released by GenSpect. Do you know who GenSpect are?
No idea.
It's all right. They're dodgy. Had a look at them. I do not think that the general consensus is that their polls are not entirely reliable.
Sure.
But there does seem to be a lot of polls running around which are dubious, but seem to be at least claiming that there has been a swing away from support of trans rights. Is that something that you or other members in the trans community have noticed?
I mean, I definitely feel like there's been more toxicity in the discourse around trans people, specifically online, and I think that's largely in part to like specifically Winston Peters and Jenny Marcroft and New Zealand First, like using it as like a wedge issue to motivate their voters who might not otherwise come to the polls otherwise, right? I don't know.
Yeah, it does seem to be this slightly sudden swing since about COVID time. I mean, parties like the quote-unquote Women's Rights Party was formed during that time.
Yeah.
New Zealand First had its 7th rebrand, and the Women's Rights Party apparently commissioned some of these polls from GenSpect, who are not keen on this sort of thing. But even in their polling, which again is dubious, I think their methodology is not actually quite clear. That they do claim to have polled 1,000 people, they still think so. That here's one. here's one result I want to get your response to. They polled people in 2026, very recently. Would you support a party that protects single-sex spaces? 37% say yes, 41% say no, and 22% say unsure.
Sure.
Yeah.
What is my response to that?
Well, yeah.
I mean, I guess I feel like it wasn't an issue on people's minds until like politicians started talking about it, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like this specifically, it's born out of like American right-wing commentators like Matt Walsh, Ben Shapiro, and stuff. They're again similar tactics, using it to like drum up rage and frustration, like moral panic, right? In order to distract from what they're actually about, right?
Yeah, polls are very oblique and slightly hard to understand. I do think this result, even with their skewed methodologies, is slightly comforting.
Yeah.
A lot of their because all of their other results are quite concerning, but this is kind of the nub of it. And in all of their polling results, there's quite a sizable proportion of unsure. There's hardly a majority for anyone.
Sure.
With the exception of the ACT Party. Of great concern and confusion, it seems that ACT voters are more anti-trans than New Zealand First voters.
That's bizarre, right?
Isn't that bizarre? Yeah. I think, and this is something I want to very briefly discuss, the position of the ACT Party.
Yeah.
Because obviously we've had conscious issues in New Zealand before, and before the leadership of David Seymour, I can't remember his name, but there was one MP of ACT New Zealand when
Rebel.
No, it wasn't. No, it was when. It might have been Rodney Hyde, because it was when it was the legalisation of homosexual marriage.
Yeah.
And the leader of ACT NZ voted in favour of that. So ACT New Zealand has moved a little bit, because they've been pretty vitriolic about this issue quite suddenly, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, they always branded themselves as like libertarians, like we believe in free markets, but behind closed doors you can do what you like. But no, they're just like putting their finger up to the wind, seeing which way it's blowing, and I guess they see that, New Zealand First is surging compared to them, so they're trying to jump on the train, competing over the same voters, right?
Is there anything, because we've discussed how this might affect trans people specifically and in law, court decisions, how it might affect abortion, but is there something we've not mentioned that's perhaps a bit of a blind spot? What other potential harm could this cause?
That's a very good question. I mean, to me, like, for one, it's like hugely symbolic escalation, which just kind of makes it culturally more acceptable to be anti-trans, which could have downstream effects just at a street level, right? That we could be harassed or attacked. You've seen in America that there have been trans people who have been murdered after like extended culture wars like this. Like, it just has a toxifying effect on the culture and on our rights, right? On how we're treated.
Certainly the downstream cultural effect. I mean, these members of Parliament are community leaders. They are in our communities.
Yeah,
a very, very concerning turn.
Yeah, and to me, like, this specific piece of legislation, we've obviously discussed the legal implications, how it's all quite hazy. But to me, this bill marks like it's almost like groundwork, laying the groundwork for future like escalations in anti-trans laws, maybe like restricting access to gender-affirming care. And the like, those, or restricting us from specific spaces, all things we've seen in America play out, right?
No, we at the Almey Alternative are not keen on the Americanization of our politics. It does seem slightly perverse.
Oh, that's one word for it. Yeah.
I think the thing that rakes me over my coals, because in this bubble, in this how did Flynn Nisbet put it, and in this circle korero, as he so politely put it, we can go around in circles and sort of affirm our beliefs, but the question is how to win this conversation. How do we win this conversation? I have a perspective, but I'm going to share it, and we're going to hopefully get your perspective, because I have an interesting history with this sort of thing. I came from Tauranga before we moved to Dunedin. Tauranga is as blue as the sea. It's bluer than the sea.
Wow.
I remember vividly in intermediate, you genuinely had no idea what the word gay meant. It was like
just an insult.
Well, exactly. No, precisely. It was literally school kid parlance for cringe. It was I can't even remember precisely where that came from. But when I moved to Dunedin, there was someone in my Japanese class who is a lovely individual, and they were excellent. They were fun, but they were not mentally happy.
Sure,
which was quite in a way that was unprecedented in my life. It was quite distressing, but they transitioned.
Yeah,
they got better. And I think this very brief period in which you'd have probably said that person is not going to be alive in a very short period of time passed. They're around, they're in the Dunedin community, and they're a lovely individual. And politics is a fraught exercise, but for me, it's always been that simple. Coming from this incredibly conservative place, that simple story has kind of been the simplicity of the issue for me. It is about people's
joy, I guess.
Life,
yeah.
About their lives.
Right. Yeah.
But of course, the key aspect of that story is meeting another human being.
Yeah.
Which isn't always the case in, say, Invercargill, in Queenstown, in the ruralities. What is the solution besides importing everyone into Dunedin? What do we do?
Yeah, 10 mandatory 10 trans people in every rural town. No,
I'm glad you've patriotically volunteered, Neave.
Well, honestly, It's a difficult conversation because it's just so toxic, right? And I mean, on both sides, admittedly, like I don't want to give false equivalency here, but there is some degree of like knee-jerk reaction, regardless, that kind of prevents any like constructive conversations from being had. And I guess just remembering to emphasize empathy. I don't know, and I know that's hard for especially a lot of trans people. Hearing people say like, "Oh, you're just pretending to be a man," that can elicit bad reactions. But we really need to actually like sit down and listen to people. I know it's the arguments can. I don't like getting like lost in the reeds of like specific talking points going back and forth. I would just prefer to emphasize, like, we are here, we're a community, we have our needs and our rights, and it's unfair and it's affecting our mental health to have these sorts of bills fronted up upon us. And I guess I would also emphasize that with like the specific legislation, that it's not actually making the lives of like cis people better. It's just increasing anxiety on the trans community and intersex communities with no benefit for anyone else, right? I don't know, just making that clear well, it's making our lives worse. I don't know.
No, I hear what you're saying about the difficulty with engaging with these specific talking points. It's hard because on the one hand, I would think we still need to engage with those specific talking points because these are community leaders. You know, the Minister of Foreign Affairs called protesters who agree with you and I egotistical mouth breathers. So that was his precise quote for any litigious individual listening in.
Great to have a constructive conversation that way, right? Yeah.
But precisely, he's a community leader. What he says will be repeated by his voters. A vote count which has doubled in about a year. But also, it is a bit intellectually thin. We at the Almey Alternative aren't quite keen on the intellectually thin.
Absolutely.
So we might double back to some of the talking points and trying to engage with them in imagining the average voter. But let's move on to a new issue.
Sure.
How many more readings will this have in Parliament?
I asked Rachel Brooking about this, and she was a bit unsure. Of course, there's going to be a second reading, and then I think she said it would go to like a members' committee potentially, but it is kind of up in the air when exactly the second reading will be. It might not be until after the election, potentially, which would be nice if that could be the case. But,
I disagree. That there's something. The second reading to me hold a specific tension because on a lot of sort of big issues relating to say like the Human Rights Act or rights in New Zealand, sometimes these things are put to a conscience vote.
Yeah, and I mean that there's potential for that to happen.
Yeah.
Though whether that will happen because this government has shown contempt for democratic procedure in a bunch of ways already. So I'm not sure I would trust them to put it to a conscience vote.
Yeah, there's a very interesting record with this iteration of the National Party on conscience votes. This may be totally wrong for all the litigious listeners listening in. Around the tail end of Judith Collins' leadership of the National Party, there was a vote on the criminalisation, the abolishment of conversion therapy.
Yeah.
And she was going to whip the National Party to vote in favour of the banning of conversion therapy.
Okay.
But then the leadership of Christopher Luxon came in and he changed that because it was at this very, very neat point, and he changed it to a conscience vote in which several currently senior ministerial members of the National Party voted against it. It did still pass. Of course. Let's just engage in sort of like a mental exercise. Let's imagine a conscience vote. So at present, the vote in the first reading, which was whipped, was 55 to 67 in a parliament of 124. So that's 55 from the opposition party, 67 from the government parties. Assuming that the entire opposition, which is not a sure thing, not a sure thing, but judging on previous conscience issues, the opposition usually loses, 3 votes? Like the entire Green Party, the entire Te Pāti Māori, and like maybe 2 people from the Labour Party won't vote for it.
Yeah.
The difference is, I believe I've done the math already, 7 votes.
7 votes.
So you and me, Neave Ashton, let's just imagine that the listeners at home want to encourage their local MP in a hypothetical conscience vote to vote against this bill. Can we find in our imagination 7 members of the government, 7 names who we think would vote against this bill? I have one. I'll start. Paul Goldsmith.
Paul Goldsmith, you reckon?
Yeah, he's actually one of the few surviving members of that group of national MPs who voted in favour of the legalisation of homosexuality. He's opinions can divide over Paul Goldsmith. Yeah. I'm not entirely fond of the biographer of Don Brash, but I do. But who knows the inner machinations? I think on social issues, Paul Goldsmith is socially liberal, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I heard from Paul Goldsmith, he was asked, I think, about like an amendment to the Human Rights Act, whether to explicitly include gender identity as like a protected like class, and he said it was, quote, not a priority. So X'd it out on that one. Sorry, Harry.
Well, there's all sorts of weird machinations that goes on behind the scenes. I didn't say he was a saint. I just said that he's a possible no vote.
I mean, with enough pressure, right?
Well, exactly. We're thinking because hypothetically the listeners at home could lobby all 67 members of the government, but surely the caucus of New Zealand First are like a lost cause in terms of this. We're thinking about people who are pliable. Let's rephrase it as that pliable. Is there anyone else you could think in the caucus of 67 who you think would be pliable to lobbying?
I must admit I am not particularly familiar with the sensibilities of national members of parliament.
Who is?
Yeah. But, I mean, if you were to do some research on some more liberally minded, socially liberally minded MPs, then I don't know. Do you know, is Stanford, does she lean in that direction?
Yeah, it's always a bit difficult. I must admit, I remember back in my days at high school, there was like that Wikipedia article of Erica Stanford, and it had a sort of like victory speech in her electorate where she said, "Oh, I'm a Green at heart." And since then, I've sort of my opinions have sort of curdled on the relevance of an individual MP's in like their feelings in their heart. When conscience votes are so rare, there that it hardly becomes relevant. This gimmick of mine is failing before my eyes. I think I'd recommend for the people at home. I think the Minister of Women has sort of shown herself to be a little bit sort of tepid on the issue.
Yeah, I mean, from what you said before, right? And like, if she gets enough phone calls and gets enough emails, like that might sway her in a potential conscience vote. Right?
I would speculate Erica Sanford. It's more obvious, actually, the members of the National Party who are probably highly in favour of this. The Honourable Minister of Health, and that's his title, and he's the National Party campaign chief, which
Simeon Brown, right?
Yeah, it doesn't bode well, does it? You know, him being the him and his track record on abortion legislation, no doubt.
He's a bit like religiously conservative, isn't he?
Yeah, and it's always a bit of a tricky thing. I don't necessarily think people's private beliefs are totally disqualifying. It's not like we're going to pass a law that says religious conservatives can't be ministers of health. It does just make you a little bit suspicious when they start fiddling with something that might have relevance to abortion.
Yeah, or like on the rights of an entire minority community.
Yes, indeed. Unfortunately, I think it bodes slightly unwell, because when you look at the national MPs, see, this is just the thing that tears at my heart a little bit, and I'm sure for some National Party voters it does as well, because history does show it's a broad church. There are socially liberal members of the National Party, socially conservative members of the National Party. There's more socially conservative ones than socially liberal ones.
But we only need 7, right?
Exactly. And these votes surely must be found. If there is a conscience vote, surely it is within the power. We are clothed in this incredible power of sending emails off a dozen. We in a government of 67. Surely 7 can find it within their hearts to just cast a no vote.
Yeah,
only
hope so.
7.
It's possible.
It's possible. But this is imagining, hypothetically, a conscience vote, which might not be the case.
Yeah, and again, I think it would... Well, this is assuming the opposition wins the next election, that would... be a surefire way of making sure this bill doesn't get
absolutely
second reading.
Well, when I say that there's 7 seats between this and that, it does regard to the election as well, but we'll move on from that now. Sure. Yeah. Unfortunately, we saw it also during the legalisation of homosexual marriage, that within the National Party caucus, even the National Party caucus of John Key, that there was a majority against the legalisation of homosexual marriage. I think they've been referred to as the Taliban faction by
Christian Taliban,
by their socially liberal colleagues within the National Party.
Something to form a new political party, Eric.
I wouldn't. I think. I don't know. I've not been paying attention the last few decades, but I think the Taliban's lost a bit of appraisal in public opinion.
But hot takes only on the Almey Alternative, right?
Exactly. We've got to equivocate. It would be litigious to say that without commissioning a poll. So the Almey Alternative is soliciting inquiries. If you don't like the Taliban, please call nobody. If you like the Taliban, please don't call anybody as well.
Yeah, especially don't call us, please.
Right. What else?
That's a great question.
Was the turnout good at that lovely, lovely protest?
It was fantastic.
The weather was great too, but how was the turnout?
The turnout was absolutely fantastic. The ODT estimated over 1,000 people. I mean, just looking over from like the stage, right? Shoulder to shoulder, people everywhere on all the steps and whatnot, looking around. It was fantastic. The sound of their chants was near deafening. It was absolutely fantastic. I couldn't have asked for a better turnout, to be honest. I wasn't expecting anything like that. So,
yeah. It's always I always chuckle a little bit at round numbers. Over 1,000. Goodness me, that was quite precise. Quite precise.
Not even I estimated that high. So
proper journalism is going around and counting each person individually, and also noting when people leave. Or goodness me, why aren't we replacing all journalists with AI? Never mind. I take
swiftly on.
I love Critic to Aruhi. They're my favourite people.
Have they done that?
No.
Okay.
No, the official line is we don't need AI to make this slop. You see it on the stickers. You see it on the stickers.
Okay. based.
Could you brief, because it was mentioned during, I think, the protest, and it's something that confused me. So if it confuses me, goodness knows what it does to everyone else. What's all this about the Bill of Rights? What was the relevance of the Bill of Rights to this whole lark?
The Human Rights Act.
Yeah, exactly. Explain that to me.
Sure. So under the Human Rights Act, gender identity isn't an explicit protected group. In courts and stuff, trans identities have only been protected under sex. And one of the fears of this specific legislation, as it says that regardless of gender identity, you're either a man or a woman, that it may remove those protections found in the Human Rights Act, that gender identity may no longer be a protected class against like discrimination, right? Which wouldn't be very good.
No. So just repeat that for me again. What was it you said? That gender identity isn't protected, but gender discrimination is protected.
It says sex-based discrimination.
Yeah.
And the courts up until now have considered like gender identity under like sex-based discrimination.
Strange and confusing.
Yeah.
Interestingly, during my my research, and again, this is the problem for attorney generals of all time. MPs who are attorney generals kind of have this procedural function. That Chris Bishop, attorney general, did actually produce a report that said that there were concerns that this bill might produce age-based discrimination. Because
really?
Of course, because it mentions age.
Right.
It mentions adult.
Yes, of course, yeah. Like we were talking about with abortion before, right?
Well, exactly. I wouldn't want to be a National Party Attorney General because they always seem to be in an embarrassing spot between them and Judith Collins.
Yeah. What was it that Judith opposed?
I know it was as Attorney General. I think they produced something about it's the changing of like when you can vote.
Laws,
right? Yeah. Which again, like I said, that was Judith Collins doing a procedural job that she probably wouldn't have done if she hadn't been Attorney General. It's a very procedural thing. So is the call to enshrine gender identity as protected under the Human Rights Act?
That was definitely part of the kaupapa of the protest. To amend the Human Rights Act so that gender identity becomes explicitly under New Zealand law a protected class, and it's not just implicitly protected under the sex-based protections against discrimination.
Yes, and the former cross-parliamentary consensus, which has seemingly dissolved. It's something I mentioned with my interview with Flynn about how it must do your head in when you're following general Facebook things, and then suddenly it's like a group sort of consciousness thing. Suddenly, every member of the right wing of Parliament have had this revelation, and they've found in their souls their truth, all at once.
Yeah, well, you said nothing that could potentially be described as slander, but at the start of this, but I would say marching orders ? From on high, that this is part of a culture war thing.
I wouldn't say it's slander or libelous to say that members of Parliament do generally get press releases.
That's true.
do generally get lines to promote. One can observe the flight of the birds despite their legal representation, and the way in which it's done. So in order for gendered identity to be protected under the Human Rights Act, would that just require a simple parliamentary majority?
Yeah, just an amendment to the Act, yeah. And
what would that change tangibly? It would, because you and I were not exactly lawyers, so watch viewers in the coffee house as we both, it's like you overhear a conversation of two people who have no idea what they're talking about, but let's make an attempt.
Idea what we're talking
let's
about.
Make an attempt. What would that practically change? Because I think this is the nub of what we're trying to get at.
Sure.
What changes?
My understanding would be that instead of it like being implicit, having it fall under sex-based discrimination, that if there were like explicit legal protections for gender identity, I did have a look at the Human Rights Act. I can't remember exactly what it said, but if there were future bills that are pertaining to gender identity or to any minority, that it would have to go before, I think, a Human Rights Commission before it could even be voted on. I think that's a question mark there, but it would basically just make legal protections for gender identity just more concrete, right? And less open to debate and interpretation.
Let's, I think, at this point, double back to some of the talking points by parties of the right. Mind you, as of present, only again, in the strange confounding, because most of the votes have come from the National Party caucus, most of the avid support from it has come from ACT New Zealand and the New Zealand First Party. We've kind of covered New Zealand First's position on it. Actually, just moving, I'm going to shove that to a side 1 second.
Sure.
Protest. We saw 3 members of Parliament attend the protest.
Yes.
There was it was the local kind of incumbent members. There was Rachel Brooking, MP for Dunedin, Ingrid Leary, MP for Tairi, Fran, List Green MP for Dunedin, who came in after all that hoo-de-ha earlier in the term with the excellent vetting processes of the Green Party.
No comment.
Why? Where's the National Party candidate?
Well, that's a great question. We invited them.
You invited the National Party candidate for Dunedin.
Yeah, I even invited bloody Mark Patterson.
Oh goodness, you could have saved a lot of time.
It was about like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But we invited them. Just say, hey, do you want to show your solidarity with your fellow New Zealanders against this bill? And they, I guess, thought, well, that would go against the party line. So,
did you receive any response from Mark Patterson or Christine? Did you invite anyone else that is sort of didn't show up or that I'm missing?
Invited every single member of the DCC, including Lee Vandervis, including Russell Lund, including Joe Gaylor. We didn't invite Benedict Dong, unfortunately.
How rude.
Yeah.
How rude.
Yeah, I know. Controversial. But didn't get any responses from them. But who else did we invite? Oh, just every, local politician we invited just so they could come and show their support, right? Because we wanted the event to be non-partisan, just a celebration of transgender, intersex identities.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was interesting the celebratory nature of it. I don't want to dog on that at all, but it would be good to discuss and get that, because that was something that did confuse me. I felt that was just me.
Sure.
Everyone was really happy. I was like, oh my God, this is a thing that's happening that feels a bit out of control. You didn't wish I was thinking I didn't wish it had come to this, that we have to be here today. For me, it was emotional because, as I said, I have a lot of friends like yourself for whom I hold this to be quite harmful. Walk me through the celebratory angle of that protest, but paint a scene.
I guess we just wanted a kaupapa of joy, of like defiance, of celebrating the community, saying like, sure, you can write your laws that write us out of recognition, but hey, we're here, we're absolutely fabulous, and you can't really get rid of us. And honestly, I feel that sort of tone is kind of more effective than like seething rage and like browbeating, right? Like it means more people might who are on the fence might be more willing to listen, right?
Yeah, and I commend you for that specifically. It was very lovely, and I very much appreciate all those members of Parliament for their attendance.
Absolutely.
I take a special amusement and joy for some. I think at one particular moment I was standing some distance, but next to Ingrid Leary, and I heard her say something rather angry about what the government was doing. She very very fun and passionate member of Parliament.
Love to hear it.
Yeah. just as a total anecdote, I remember I was writing an interview for Critics specifically, interviewing Ingrid Leary, and I was looking back to see if she had featured in Critic previously, and wouldn't you know it, she did appear in passing in 2021, where there had been a trans rights protest, and she was just there, and Critic walked up to them and was like, "What are you doing here?" And she was like, "I don't know, I support trans people. This isn't an exact quote, I must be specific, but she was like, a big fan of trans people. Here to sort of show support." And I thought, hey,
can't complain.
There we go. She's been at it for a few years. I'm sure the same is true for the other members of Parliament.
My favourite allies are the ones that are slightly bewildered.
I'm not sure Ingrid Leary has ever been slightly bewildered in her life.
Fair enough.
I think I think everyone else is a deer in headlights. As another, let's just trade anecdotes at this point.
Sure.
I remember another instance during the George Street market. There was a market, and the Green Member of Parliament, Fran, was suddenly this fellow with a lovely German accent materialised in front of him, paid actor, I'm sure, and started ragging on about why the Green Party was so sort of like LGBT. In his perspective, I'm sure the stickers just really caught his eye. And
too woke kind of thing, or
precisely. The word "shoving down throats," which again I thought was I thought that word only existed on the internet. You're always surprised, aren't you? You're always surprised.
I guess that elicits a visceral emotional reaction.
Yeah.
And
Fran was the point being is that Fran was quite commendably steadfast in that interaction that I observed. So there's my anecdote.
Sure. Yeah. Like anecdote from the day, or
no? That was the George Street market.
Sure.
I was just being fair and saying that it wasn't just Ingrid Leary who's very, very keen on these sorts of things.
Yeah, I mean Sophie Barker was there as well, which was quite nice.
And Steve, I saw Steve Walker. I'm sure there were other councillors. Were any of the councillors that we've not mentioned that you saw there?
I mean, not that Mandy Mayhem was there.
Hard to miss.
Yeah, absolutely. She was wearing a fabulous skirt, and I was wearing this green sweater when I came up and talked to her, and she said, "Oh, you're not looking particularly fabulous today." And I said, "Yeah."
Should have packed it up at that point, Nate. Should have packed it up.
Yeah, and I said, "Yeah, I'm dressed a bit like a 40-year-old dad at the moment."
Fantastic. Yeah. Hey, bad fashion sense. It goes beyond genders. It goes beyond. But right. So here is my challenge for you, Neave Ashton. We are coming on to 5 minutes left in this interview, and I've been amiss. Time is running out. I've not written a submission on this bill. So the Almey Alternative, live on air, is going to write a submission regarding this bill. But I'm a bit stupid. I've got no clue. I'm going to need some advice and some support. So we're going to start. Right, I've got a bit of paper in front of me. Kia ora. Who should I be addressing this to, or is that sort of not an issue really?
I guess just members of the select committee.
Members of the select committee. Do you have any idea who'll be sitting on the select committee?
No.
I might be able to sum that up on my computer in a second. Right. Is there like a specific phrase that you use? Like, what's the advice for a submission? I don't want you to tell me word for word what to do, but what's the go usually?
Just keep it clear and precise. Like, open strong with like, I'm writing to oppose the definition of a man and a woman amendment bill.
Yeah, I'm writing to oppose. I'm just going to say this bill for now. Is it recommended to lay out the reasons, or just to say I oppose it?
It just depends on the amount of effort you want to put in.
Yeah.
Like if you don't have much time, then you can just say I oppose this bill. Maybe give a reason, and you can submit that. Like it just kind of matters volume. Of the submissions they get matters more, but obviously having well thought out arguments adds weight to them, right? So it really just depends on the amount of effort you want to put in. If you want to have a long, exhaustive 40-page report submission, probably make the MPs on the committee want to resign, but yeah.
Wouldn't that be a story? I give up my cushy little job. I resign from Parliament. By-elections, people. Who doesn't like a by-election?
Bloody what was it? Makerfield in the UK.
Oh, fantastic! That was a suitably getting me distracted. Distracting me, Neave. We're running out of time. Yeah. Very interesting. I'm just going to very quickly. See, I've got too many tabs open. Oh dear. I need to close that. Brilliant. Well thought out reasons. I always find that it's difficult to think of what precise well thought out reason to give, whether it needs to be totally from yourself or needs to be sort of like addressing their main argument head on, which is again difficult in our modern MMP environment when all three parties are giving you different reasons that they're supporting the bill.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just the most I prefer to have the most direct, like, harmful impacts of the bill as the reasons why, like restricting access to abortions and bloody, marginalising trans and intersex identities.
I saw comment. Just work me through it. I did see comment that this would specifically erase intersex people. Is that the same for non-binary people as well?
I suppose non-binary kind of falls under whatchamacallit, under like gender identity, like transgender. Yeah. I mean, not every non-binary person identifies as transgender, but I personally do.
Fair enough. Yeah. But does it erases intersex people? Does it?
It just makes no reference at all to intersex people. Like, it doesn't even account for them. Basically. Yeah,
because intersex isn't, as you said at the beginning, isn't necessarily trans. I think it's its own rare biological thing. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's more with like your physical body, how you're born, right?
Yeah.
Like, and your chromosomes might be outside the binary.
Funky. Harmful impact, marginalised, because this will have an impact on the mental health of the trans community, which I think, for risk of sounding like I'm making a joke, it's already fraught as it is, I think, statistically.
I mean, you can't really argue with that. This sort of legislation just makes it worse, right? Like, personally, to give an anecdote, like, when this bill had its first reading, like, I legit felt pretty anxious. So anxious I couldn't sleep for the next 2 nights. Right?
Was that when the bill was promulgated, or when everyone rode in behind it?
When the coalition unified behind it.
Yeah. Right. We're coming to the end. We'll have a last message from you, and we'll have a last message from me. Hit it.
Sure. Everyone, please remember to make your select committee's submissions against the definition of a man and woman amendment bill. Submissions close on the midnight of the 2nd of July, so you only have when does this go live?
Tomorrow. So you'll have maybe a week or two. So you better get in quick, and please remember to make a submission, because that's the only way that politicians actually can hear dissent directly from the people. Yes, exactly. And the politicians are indeed listening. For those swing votable, these politicians are struggling in the polls.
Yes.
These politicians are looking towards their future, and they're looking forward towards their jobs, and you are the voter, dear listeners. New Zealand has stepped out upon the world stage, thought of internationally as this socially liberal place. The Almey Alternative does not always like to steep within the mainstream of things, but it can obviously be said that we are opposed towards this bill. 7 votes in the House of Representatives stand between this bill passing and failing. Keep that in mind as you write to your members of Parliament, as you submit in your select committees, and as you vote in this general election this year. This has been the Almey Alternative. Thank you very much for coming, Neave.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Harry. It's been so fun.
Yeah, fantastic. Do. Gad, what an enigma. Every day the horizon of our imagination grows. I can't wait for tomorrow. You can find more episodes of the Almey Alternative on oar.org.nz, Spotify and Apple Podcasts. See you soon, dear listeners.
This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On the Air.